Thank you everyone for coming to today's session. My name is Melissa Harris. I'm from Harford Community College. I'm the coordinator for e-learning there, and I'm on the Maryland Online Board. Thanks for coming to today's session, Gamified Course Design. Debbie is our presenter today, and I'll be moderating for her. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and I'll let her know that there's a question waiting because we can't always see when we're presenting. So I'll take care of alerting her to those. And also, if you can keep your microphones muted, that's also some good meeting etiquette, and that'll help us move along. So as a brief introduction, Debbie Dorsey holds a Master of Science in Exercise Physiology from Louisiana State University and is Assistant Professor of Health and Physical Education at Harford Community College. She has been with the college for 15 years, 14 of which have included teaching online.
The judge will keep everyone here.
Debbie is a Maryland Distance Learning Association board member and Quality Matters peer reviewer. She is co-chair of the Distance Learning Committee and sits on the Learning Assessment Committee, IRB. I'm not sure what that acronym stands for.
Internal Review Board.
Okay, Internal Review Board and Curriculum Work Group. That's the one I didn't know. She's also a vegan who forces herself to run so that she can eat carbs. That's Debbie.
True. And I always joke, I think the carbs are winning. So hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Before, I just want to make sure that everybody is muted. Although certainly, you know, if you have a question, you can always jump in and ask me. I also am going to, from time to time, ask whether or not you can see my screen. I'm working with two screens, and we all know how that goes. A lot of times, you know, you think you're showing something and you're talking and people have no idea what you're talking about because they can't see your screen. So just to make sure, if somebody, and actually, Melissa, I'll ask you, are you able to see Gamified Course Design?
I am, yes.
Awesome. Okay. So again, I am Debbie Dorsey. I am Assistant Professor of Health at Harford Community College. There's me. This is actually one of the avatars that I use when I create videos online. Oh, and just as a reminder, folks, as you're coming on, make sure that you're muted. Awesome. Thank you. So this is one of the avatars that I use when I create videos online for students. And I think I may have my other one in here as well. But I like Melissa said, I am going to talk about gamified or gamification in course design. And so we're going to start off a little bit with some definitions. But the other thing that I should mention too, okay, you see that I'm here. You see what I look like, but I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off now so that we can focus, on the presentation. All right. So gamification, if you are unfamiliar with the term, basically what it is the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. So of course, in this particular situation, we're talking about using it in an online course. And it shouldn't be confused with, sometimes you'll hear these things used interchangeably, but they're not the same. And you'll hear people use the term game-based learning, but game-based learning is different. It is when you are utilizing an activity to help students learn a concept, your subject matter. And I've given you an example here. I teach Introduction to Public Health. And this is, if you've not ever heard about it before, this is a game called Plague. And it's a little morbid. However, it's outstanding at helping students to understand epidemiology, which is kind of a dry subject. But when they play this game, they are better able to understand things like prevalence and incidence, all that good stuff as part of epidemiology. And so again, that's different. You can think about game-based learning as sort of these discrete type of, activities that you're going to do within the context of teaching your subject matter, but it's not gamification course design. And so just to give you a little bit of background on me and where I was sort of coming from with this, prior to coming to Harford Community College, prior to working for higher education, my job was working with people who would, the first one was working in a clinical setting at Hopkins, and then I moved on to working in the federal government, but it was running programs that were designed to help people lose weight. And so, of course, right there, the whole foundation of that is to help people change their behaviors. And so, in the context of weight management, of course, that's getting people to exercise. And then also it is getting people to make good food choices, right? And so I had this background on human behavior. It is something that I'm very interested in. I continue to be interested in. And now it's, of course, in the context of online learning. And I have been teaching for about, I guess, 15 years online. And, it's always been a little bit of a struggle. I'm sure those of you who teach online also have experienced this, but teaching online and getting students to do well in an online learning environment, it's not easy. And so I started looking at, why are people not doing well in an online course? In fact, the college, I guess it was about a little over 10 years ago. At this point, after, the whole COVID thing, time is sort of this abstract concept. But I think it was like about 10, 12 years ago that the college really started investigating how students were performing in online courses. And when we compared them to face-to-face courses, students weren't doing as well. And that was my experience as well. And so I started thinking to myself, what can I do here to help? And so the question became, how do I create motivation? How do I get people to get on board, students to get on board with what we call goal-directed behavior, doing better, doing the behaviors that we need them to do in order to be successful, right? And the key word, I think, here is, before I get into that, the one thing, and some of this is likely to be familiar to all of you, but basically the foundation for this is what we call behaviorism, right? And so that's learning. The classical definition of behaviorism is learning that is based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. And we probably have all heard of that word as well. Conditioning occurs through interaction with the environment. And again, sort of the grandfather of all of these thinking is Skinner. And he talked about operant conditioning. There he is. He's a handsome man, isn't he? But really here, with operant conditioning, the word is voluntary. These are voluntary behaviors. And in this particular case, when we give positive reinforcement, that encourages the students to repeat voluntary positive behaviors. And of course, then, they are doing better, we hope, in the course. And so when we think about, what is it about student behavior that promotes success in an online course? We all know the first thing that people always say is time management, but it's not, it's their independent ability to manage their time. And I use that word because when we think about students in face-to-face courses, it's sort of in a little bit of a sense, forced time management. You've met at a certain day, a certain time, certain location, right? So it's sort of hardwired into face-to-face courses. Now, of course, right, students have to do work outside of that face-to-face time. So there is a little bit of time there. But in an online course, it almost is exclusively independent time management. The other thing, the other student behavior, and this is sort of a mix between behavior and cognitive sort of abilities, but it's the ability to to be a thorough and comprehensive reader. All right. And so again, looking at all of these things and thinking to myself, what can I do here? The thing that really occurred to me is that it's not exclusively a matter of design, of course design. So when we talk about course design, it's the alignment, assessment, learning activities, learning material. Probably if you're familiar with Quality Matters, this is going to look familiar to you, right? And so a lot of times when we think about course design, these are what we're looking for, or these are what we're talking about. But really, and again, you can have a fantastically designed course, but that doesn't actually mean that your students are going to pass your course, right? You can have a great course design. It does not guarantee that that student will be motivated to engage in those behaviors, those voluntary behaviors that are needed in order for you to pass your course, right? And so again, when I was thinking about all of these things, I said, what is it about video games? What is it about this that promotes and motivates the player to keep trying? And can I simulate some of that in my online course? And so I took a course through the OLC on gamification. It really started making me think a little bit about game design and how I could incorporate that into my course in order to start motivating those behaviors, right? And so I went to the eLearning folks and they were like, oh God, here she comes. She's always got these ideas, but they were very nice and worked through using a learning mod. It's called learning. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Learning modeling technique in order to start bringing the gamification into the course. And so here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to explain to you first the lingo, the gamification lingo. And then we're going to take a tour of my course. It's not a live course, but I'm going to show you how I've taken some of these terms, some of these parts of the theory of gamification, and I'm going to show you, kind of how it evolved. And then we're also going to take a look at it through the student's eyes. And then, of course, the question that always comes up is, well, Debbie, is it working? So we're going to talk a little bit of data as well. And so I'm going to switch over now to a PowerPoint. And so if you give me just a second here, we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Thank you, Paltoons. You always, they make sure that they, get their branding in here. All right, give me 1 second. All right, there we go. So hopefully, again, you're able to see my screen that says onboarding.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So let's go over some of the lingo, some of the terminology. When we talk about gamification is what we use in like if we're creating video games, as well as when we talk about gamified course design. So onboarding in this, what this means is, how do you communicate to the student what the rules are? How are they gonna navigate through your course? How are you going to incorporate those, how it works so that they really understand? So again, most of the time, the students that are in my class, they're not used to this. They're not used to the way that my course is set up. They're used to traditional design. So it's super important that they understand how the rules work, okay? And a key part of that, again, I'll show this to you, is putting the rules in multiple locations in the course and in multiple formats. And what I mean by that is in video format and in text, because what will happen is at the point where they're going to have to start needing to work the game, work the rules. That's when they're really going to go, wait, hold up. How does this thing work again? And so, when I say things just got real, that could be you missed a deadline or you bombed an assignment. So now, how are you going to start utilizing these elements of the game in order to sort of recover from those things? And I think, again, that this will make better sense once we start looking at and touring the course. The other term that we use is scaffolding. And the whole purpose of scaffolding is to build motivation in the student. And again, we're trying to motivate them to do those behaviors that we know are going to help them be successful. So one of the ways that I do that is with quizzes. And I give the students multiple times to take a test. It's repetition. The goal is creating those repetitive desired actions, right? Log in, do something again, do something 3 times. It helps the student. What we're looking at is time on task. But again, how do I get a student to be motivated in order to, log into the course and do these quizzes? And how can I sort of create that sense of, I need to do this, right? And so I use a system where you can be rewarded or you can be penalized or you can redeem yourself. And part of this is a use of virtual currency. And that's where you can see sort of this little middle icon here with the diamond that represents virtual currency. And so in the very beginning, the way that the rules work, or the way that this, you start to do well in this course, is that you achieve at least an 80% on the quizzes. But again, they can take them. I usually give them up to 3 times. And so there's multiple times, right? There's repetitive, many times that they can do this in order to hit that score, what they need in order to start gaining what we call virtual currency. Now, there are 2 types of rewards in my course. The first is achievement-based. And so the way that you can look at achievement-based is that it's measurable, it's quantifiable, it's a score, right? So here, this person did not achieve the 80% threshold just yet, but the whole part of achievement-based rewards for me, my goal is, and these are those Bloom's taxonomy verbs, is that the student remember and understand the learning material. And so in that way, of course, it is appropriate for us to utilize our quizzes, multiple choice, true, false, right? But what we're moving towards then are the assignments where students have to apply, analyze, evaluate, create, right? They're those higher cognitive domains. At that point, they're action-based rewards. Just because you know something doesn't mean that you can apply it, analyze it, evaluate, create it, right? If you're wrong, none of those things are going to happen. And so action-based rewards in the context of my course, again, is doing things that will help you to be successful. And one of those things is what I call early review. And I'm going to table that. I'm going to keep you in suspense and I'm going to show it to you when we get into the course. So here's what I was talking about, virtual currency. What the students can, when they perform certain actions, when they achieve something or they do those, the behaviors that we talked about just a second ago, they can earn virtual currency, right? So they earn it by doing that desired behavior. They then have to use it if they did not do the desired behavior. And an example of that is that they have to use it if they didn't submit the assignment on time, if they, they need an assignment extension, or if they submitted the assignment, but they didn't do well on it. Then I offer what I call a do-over, where you can take the feedback that I give you, and you can, if you want, you can exchange your virtual currency if you have enough for a second opportunity here, right? So what I'm doing is I'm creating a system whereby hopefully they start to learn that positive behaviors result in this, accumulation of virtual currency. But when they don't do those, when they don't, exhibit or do those, behaviors, that they're going to then lose a little bit of that virtual currency. Loss aversion. So the way that these, and you're going to see that there's a lot of overlap here. I think about gamification as a very sort of holistic way of looking at things. It's not linear. So loss aversion, this means that we motivate the person, the student, through a fear of losing something that has sort of an undesirable event or undesirable consequence, right? One of the top ways that we can do this is by creating leaderboards. And this is in every single one of my courses, that after a certain period of time, I usually designate them by modules. I start ranking. And you can see here that there's a player ID. This is super important. We can't be using students' names when we create these leaderboards because, of course, it's a massive FERPA violation. So at the very beginning of all of my courses, students are given, I just sort of randomly generate these IDs, and everyone is assigned one, and they can see where they rank at the end of certain modules. So, loss aversion means, okay, I was number 5 and now I'm down to number 7. Something has happened. And, that can motivate me then to start engaging in those behaviors that I need to do in order to start bringing my grade back up. Virtual currency balance is another part of this as well. So, of course, when students are acquiring it, it's great. But when they have to use it, of course, then now they see their balance go down. And so that is also an example of creating sort of that loss aversion. But here's the good stuff, freedom to fail. So this is how we as human beings learn. And as I go through this, I really have no qualms at sharing how I view traditional ways of doing things. And one of the things that sort of bothers me is how we have traditionally tested students on their knowledge. We give them an exam, it's time, they get one shot. And I always question, what really are we getting out of this? Are we really measuring students' comprehension and understanding? Or are we just sort of measuring their ability to quickly memorize and regurgitate? It sort of violates the way that human beings learn. And of course, at the end of the day, right, that's what we want. We want our students to learn our subject matter. So freedom to fail means that you can do poorly, but you will get other opportunities to improve. So for example, with the quizzes that I give them, and they can start, depending on if they get that 80% or better, and they can earn their virtual credit, their virtual currency, they get to take it 3 times. At the end of every attempt, they can see what they scored incorrectly, and then they can go back and do it again. That's freedom to fail. I have the freedom to fail this quiz the first time. However, I know that I can take it again. I can take it a 3rd time. As long as they have accumulated a sufficient number of virtual currency, they also have the freedom to fail an assignment, because then, again, if they have enough points accumulated, they can go back in and they can use that currency to get a do-over, right? So one of the sort of, I guess, the problems that I have with traditional teaching methods is it's all or none. You either got the grade, you passed, or you didn't. And there's not that opportunity to go back and to, try again. And again, this is not how we as people learn. We learn through trial and error. So another thing that we talk about, of course, in gamification is, progress and feedback. And so something else that I do is that when I give you feedback, I don't give you the right answer. That this is particularly, applies to assignments. My goal is to motivate you to get the right answer. So if I give you feedback that says, this is wrong and here's why, I haven't motivated you to then find out on your own why you were wrong. I haven't motivated you to go back in and learn and try to see if you can get the right answer. So when students submit their assignments, that's what I do. I give them, this is sort of an example of it. I got one student that was like, not the red, the red markings. But, when they submit something to me, I go in, I mark it up, and I give them feedback. And I say, hey, look, take a closer look at this. Take a closer look at that. This isn't exactly the right thing. And so if they have submitted their work for early review, this is the feedback that they get, and they have the opportunity to make those changes and resubmit. If they fail an assignment, meaning they never submitted it for early review, they just submitted it, at the very end when it was due, they didn't do well. Again, I'm not going to tell them what the right answers were. I will tell them what they did incorrectly, because again, I'm trying to get them motivated to go back in and request a do-over, to look at that feedback and say, all right, you know what, let's try again and submit it. But do you see here where there's a connection? Over time, what they start to learn is, if I use early review, I score virtual currency, so I increase my balance, and I get a chance to resubmit it by the deadline for reconsideration of grading. However, if I wait until the last possible minute, right? We've all got those, right? The deadline is 11:59 p.m. and the student submitted at 11:55 p.m., right? If I wait until the last minute to submit my work, there is a chance that I'm going to be wrong and I'm going to fail an assignment. Okay, that's fine. I have the freedom to fail because I can go back in and use my virtual currency to get a second shot. But now I've got the loss. Now my balance has decreased. So it's that learning process, right? That if I do the behaviors that facilitate success, I keep building and building and building my virtual currency. But if I do fail, then I still have the redemption, but it's going to decrease my balance. Okay.
Debbie,
Yes.
I have just a couple comments. I don't know if you want to take a
Sure.
break and check them out. Do you want me to read them to you, or do you want to look at
Yeah,
them?
that would be great.
Okay.
I'm always afraid if I switch back and forth with my screen, something will go wrong. So
I understand. The first one was from Wendy, and she said she loved the leaderboard. That was very motivating. And then a question from Stephanie Curran. I like the leaderboard too. How does it work if a student is consistently at the bottom of the leaderboard?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, and I'll go over this a little bit too, when we sort of look at the data. The student that is consistently at the bottom of the leaderboard is they're the student that ghosts you, right? They're all of a sudden they disappear. The way that I look at this is that probably was going to happen anyway. And so when that does occur, when a person is at the bottom of the leaderboard, I'm not so sure they even know that they are, because they're not logging into class, they're not submitting work. However, what I have seen and I'll talk about this towards the end, here's what I have seen in my course. The student who would normally have earned a failing grade gets a D. The student who might have gotten a D gets a C. So what I have observed with leaderboards are that they motivate the student to start engaging in some of those behaviors that I want them to do, right? I know this is how they're going to be successful. So for example, I have a student who is, a D on the leaderboard. They're within the 60 percentile, right? They're at the bottom, and they see that they are, and they also see people above them, right? So they start getting targeted feedback. You're not taking the quizzes as often as you could. Hey, did you know that you could take this quiz 3 times? And so, and score, there's the reward. I can get more virtual currency, but it in turn is getting them to take that quiz 3 times and improve their grade. So that's where I start to see that D student inch up more into a C student. And again, the way that I look at this is, had that not happened, that student probably would have stayed a D student or possibly failed, always been at the bottom, of the leaderboard.
As Stephanie said, that makes sense. That makes great sense. And she also said, I really like the early review. And the next comment from Susan is also about feedback. It says, a faculty member at my university said in a session recently that feedback like this is forward-facing, aimed at improving the performance in future work. Grades are backward-facing, and evaluation of past work. And they also said effective feedback is actionable.
Yes, I agree. Now, as far as the grades go, I guess my perspective on it is they have to happen, right? At some point, that's the grade. That is what you earn, correct? And so, if we can get feedback to improve the grade, that's awesome. But I try to get them to look at grades as being the not exclusively what you earned on an assignment. And that's part of gamification, is we start to look at things in points. How many points have I accumulated, whether that's virtual currency or the number of points, per assignment per test, so that they can look at it as forward facing. I'm looking off to the finish line, not like, oh, I just, tripped up at mile 1 in my race and now all is lost, right? So yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I also have to say, at the end of the day, there's got to be a grade.
Agreed. Those are all the comments we have for now. So feel free to
Awesome.
carry on.
Okay. Good. And please continue if there's more, interrupt me, because I know for me, I'm the kind of person who, if I don't ask the question soon, like I'll forget about it, or I'll, another question will pop up or whatever. So please continue to feel free to ask questions as we go along. Now, we're going to take a look at the course in just a second, and I will not lie to you ever. This takes time to set up, especially in the very beginning. It's time intensive. You as the instructor must fully commit to it. You must commit to enforcing, for lack of a better word, your rules. So what I like about this actually is it keeps me honest, right? It keeps me constantly in that course, constantly monitoring how they're doing, providing feedback, updating those leaderboards. From having set up these courses this way, I am far more active in my courses than I otherwise was, prior to all of this. So I'm going to show you a couple things. We're going to start off with onboarding, and I'll just walk you through, some of the other course designs so that you kind of, can see the terms, what they look like in reality. So I just switched gears here, but I think what I want to do is I'm going to switch my share to screen 1, and I'm going to bring this over here so it's a little bit bigger. So are you able to see Blackboard now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So this is sort of since this is a course that is inactive, it was from a previous semester, it's kind of a mashup of my exercise science course that I teach, and I brought a little bit of some nutrition stuff in here as well, just so I could give you a little bit of variety. So onboarding, whenever a student starts, and I think all of us do this, with a course overview and a syllabus. And of course, I forgot to log in. So let me go ahead and do that right here. The way that I onboard a student is through a combination, like I said, of text and of videos. This is funny. I was logging in once, I forget what it was. I didn't realize that my password was visible as I was logging in. So that was pretty funny. But nice thing about Microsoft, if there is a nice thing about Microsoft, is that they hide your password as you're typing it in. So this is the course overview. This is the very start of onboarding. And you can see, again, it's sort of a combination of text and of video. Now that's a universal design principle, right? That we want to provide the students with multiple means of communicating, what we want them to know, because there's all different kinds of learning, right? Some students do really well with just reading text. Others need to have that video as well. So I give them, a course navigation video, and then we talk a little bit about early review. And I want them to know early on, here's what happens. And so I give them sort of the history of what I've observed is that students who don't use early review, they don't score as well on assignments. And so I explained to them, here are the stakes. Here's what could happen, if you don't take advantage of this. Now, here's an example of how I have got to be in that course, because the early review deadline, let's say I have an assignment that's due Saturday, right? 11:59 p.m. We always pick that, right? Early review is Wednesday. It's at 12 o'clock. And it's a firm, hard rule. Like if you submitted something at 12:10 p.m., no, that's not how it works. So you have to enforce your rules. And usually, that doesn't really happen often, but occasionally it does. I get an email, hey, I submitted my assignment. I didn't get your early review. Well, it's because you submitted it at 7 p.m. But the reason why it's 12 o'clock is that I'm going to grade it that day after 12 o'clock, and you're going to get feedback by 9:30. And that's important, right? Because if you did poorly and I want you to try again and resubmit, well, you need to have time to do that, right? That gives you Thursday, Friday, Saturday to go back in and to edit your work and resubmit, right? So again, here with me as the instructor, I need to fully commit to being present, right? There are times my kid knows when she comes home, don't talk to mom on Wednesday, but it's okay because we're also going to have pizza because I don't have time to fix dinner, right? So, on Wednesdays, I'm grading these assignments to get to the point where by 9:30 they have feedback. Now, it's to kind of make it seem like all of my students take advantage of early review. That's not true. So it's not like I'm grading 600 assignments, but it's a good amount. And again, if I'm going to give feedback that's valuable to the student, it can't just be like blah blah blah. I have to take that time to give good meaningful feedback. And so it is a little time intensive. And so that explains, right? Now, this is the place where I said, they're going to come back and go, what's the rules again? What's the rules again? Because they start to do poorly on assignments. And that's when I say to them, go back into this part of, the course and review it. Because the other thing that I'm trying to teach them to do is to be independent in looking for answers. This is a video of the virtual currency. And I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but I'm just going to play a couple segments so you sort of get the idea of how this works. That's me, by the way. That's my other avatar. And so as they go through it, they start to learn. Yeah, they start to learn how it works.
From the syllabus that I am very specific about what qualifies for makeup work. I absolutely, positively require documentation to determine makeup work eligibility. It's the only way I can verify why you missed a deadline. You might say that you were sick, but for all I know, you were off parasailing in the Bahamas. But I get it. You're not always going to the doctor when you get sick. And I will concede the possibility that sometimes life gets in the way and you will forget to submit something by a deadline.
Right. So now I'm explaining to them, I'm trying to set them up for, these are the rules. The rules are if you miss a deadline and it doesn't meet that definition of an excused absence, then you don't get to submit it again unless you have virtual currency that you can trade for an extension. And so that's what this video does. It just continues to explain to them the process, what they need to do, what they need to achieve in order to earn it, how it can get used. There's some more rules. You can see things that are important to know. And it goes through the entire process. It defines, what a do-over is. It's when you bomb something and, you need to try it again, right? And it also talks a little bit about one thing that the students will often ask me is, do I offer extra credit? And the answer is no, I do not. I will allow them at the very end. It does explain to them that at the very end of the course, whatever virtual currency that they have accumulated and they haven't used yet, I will convert it to 0.25 points per one unit of virtual currency, and that will be added to the end of their grade. So that's somewhat of a version of extra credit, but no, I don't offer extra credit. I want you to complete the work as it's scheduled in the course, right? If I'm giving extra credit, that kind of defeats the whole gamification system. So then again, there's, sort of the summary of what they watched. And then at that point, they're moving through the course. In general, I set up my modules in 2-week segments. And so here's an example. There's a bunch of them here, but I'll just show you this one. Here's another place, right? Remember I told you, put it in lots of different places. Here's another reminder of how the 2-week module works. And they're set up where the first week the students will complete quizzes, right? And so there's their first opportunity to start racking up those virtual currency points. And again, repetitious, got it here, got it here. This is how you can achieve this in this module. After that week passes, now they come into the module 4 assignment. Same thing. I've got videos here that's explaining how you do this assignment. I've got template examples. So I've got, got all that stuff in there. Like if you're familiar with Quality Matters, it's got all of those elements that we're encouraged to do. The rubric, all the good stuff, right? Providing examples. So again, right here, and this is the one thing that drives me a little batty about Blackboard is how you have to sometimes go out and back in. But right here again, I've told them, look, here's the early review deadline for this assignment. And if you submit it, you get 5 points, right? So they go through it, they get it to me by Wednesday, 12 p.m. I grade it, I give them feedback, and yes, the behavior now has given you 5 points of virtual currency. Okay, and then as they go through, this is the same thing with all of the modules. They're always, for the most part, they're always 2 weeks. They can then see their leaderboards here, right? And I sort of will put the most current at the top, and they can see them. And then they can also monitor, and I'm going to show you, I'll show you what they see on their side, and I'll show you how I have to go about creating it. And then, when I show this to you, you're going to say, yeah, she's right. This is a time intensive process. So they can go into my grades. And of course, it's, what they would always see. But then if they go down here, they know here's my player ID. I can reference that back to the leaderboards. But then they can also see the virtual currency balance, right? It's that little bubble there, boom. When they go in, they can see. I always think of it as a checkbook, right? So if they've asked for like do-overs or 3-day extensions, they're 15 virtual currency points per, whatever, per those things that they asked for, right? So if they had asked for one, you would see right here in the deductions column, the request to use it, right? And so then of course it would affect their starting balance on the next module. This is a way that they can track. Now, I've been doing this for a while. And so each year I feel like I get a little bit better at it. And one of the things that I've done this year is I've created this table that I felt like was a little bit more, gave them more visual information to help themselves, sort of be independently tracking, right? So that they could go, oh, wait a minute, on this particular week, right? I did early review, I earned 15 points, but on this week I did not. And I didn't submit my assignment to the last minute. I did poorly, and then boom, I've got a deduction, right? So this is just, again, giving them that information, that the personal information that they need to help them go, make those connections of maybe I need to do this. Now, on my end of things, and this again is where, it is work. And that's me, my student preview, is that as I am going in here, right, I have to go in and imagine, I've got like 25, 30 of these at any given time that I have to look back and start, entering sort of all of this information in, let's see, there we go. I have to go through. I have a couple tabs open where I can refer back to, all right, did they score, the 80% quizzes, put that in, early review, deductions, all that good stuff. So, but again, they are promised, I have to follow the rules too. They are promised at a certain point, it's usually on Mondays, that's when all the virtual currency balances update, all things are graded and returned to them, and they can see what their leaderboard posting is. So like I said before, it keeps me actively engaged in the course. This is good, right? Because if I have a student who I'm like, wow, what's going on with, JPQ, they were 90%, they're down 70%, right? It helps me. I think one of the issues that we have in an online course is that we never see the faces of our students. We never see their expressions. We don't get all of that. So this sort of makes it a little bit more real to me, that now I'm seeing, sort of these, and yes, it's a player ID, but look, I can say, oh, 6WW was doing super great. Now they're down here, right? So that's going to help me that's going to prompt me to go in and figure out, what's going on here with this person. I noticed that you attempted the quizzes, one time, just sort of, again, that ongoing feedback to help them and motivate them to do those behaviors, right, that I want them to do. So I'm going to go back here, and then were there questions? I don't
know, none in the chat now.
Okay. So then hopefully you can see this again. Are you able to see?
I see onboarding.
But it's probably the full PowerPoint.
Yes.
All right, now let's see. Better? Looks better now.
Yes, now it's full
Okay.
screen onboarding.
Cool. Okay. So then the next part of this, right, is to, of course, you're going to say, hey, show me the numbers, the data, right? Well, my dean always says that to me. So leaderboards, and we sort of talked about this at the very beginning. Do they work? I got to tell you, it depends. Sometimes I feel like what I call any given Sunday, right? You have some classes a semester, my nutrition class will seem to be highly motivated in order to, to improve their grade. And then another semester, it's mixed, right? Here's what always works. This is the group that it always works with. And this makes sense. The kids in my exercise science courses, right? They may be a little bit competitive by nature. It really does work for them. They do tend to, when they start seeing the leaderboards change, they start changing those behaviors. Now I'm getting a student who's taken the quizzes 3 times. Now I'm getting a student who is submitting for early review. So this is just a snapshot of one of the semesters. And again, this is the exercise science person. And I tracked them over, the end of each module to kind of look at what I look for a lot, right? As the instructor, is I'm looking over here at that, that 59% withdrawal. Here's what, and you can see it across the line, I am getting fewer withdrawals than I had previously. That is one change that I've noticed. I'm also getting fewer failing grades. There was a time, and it wasn't good, but it hit a point right before I started doing some of this that I was getting like, a 30% DFW in some of the online courses. Now, it wasn't just me, it was across the board with all of our online courses that students were not performing well. But then once I started doing this, it did improve. And of course, you can see with nutrition, they were kind of flat throughout, so I still do the leaderboards. I still think that they're helpful, but sometimes they really work well. And sometimes it's not that they don't work. They just, maybe don't work as well as I want them to, I guess. And then in general, and again, this is just sort of me, giving you an interpretation of it. Again, the students who maybe would have failed, they get a D. Do I like that? No, of course we want our students to, get those higher grades, but that student didn't fail. And so when I look at this student's, the projection their school trajectory, the more Fs they get, the more defeated they're going to feel. And so, if we can get them up to being a little bit more successful, that's great. The D student becomes the C student. And again, like I said, I see a reduction in the withdrawal rate. And the way that I look at that is that the student is motivated to stay in the course. Let's see here. So what does not work at all? This is my hard, fast opinion: leveling up. All right, what leveling up is, it's, we all heard this trendy stuff about adaptive learning, right? So that when I achieve a certain thing, whether that's a score or whatever, then I level up, it unlocks things that are more challenging, and it just continues to work that way. It does not work for me. I have not seen it ever work. There was a time when I set things up where after they achieved a certain score on quizzes, it unlocked assignments, and it just, followed that leveling up idea. It did not work. They waited until the last minute to do everything, right? They waited till the final day to do their quizzes and to turn in their assignments. It just was a mess. And so I did need to bring it into, defined periods of time. You have 7 days to do this quiz. You have 7 days to do this assignment. I did need to create a little bit more of that structure because I did not find that leveling up and adaptive learning worked. If you are interested in learning more about gamification, this is a great resource. I think it's Yu Kai Chu. I think that's how he pronounces his name. He has a big website on gamification, talking about the principles. I refer back to him frequently when I look for, different ideas. So that's me. I always am happy to answer questions. If you want to email me, I put my phone number in there, but I will tell you that I am rarely at my office these days. So, yeah, but you can call and leave a voicemail if you want to talk, and I will always give you a call back. But if you do have questions, of course, like most people, the fastest way for me to get back in touch with you is through email. And that.
Thank you, Debbie. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for future Maryland Online professional development opportunities in case anyone is interested.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
I think we had talked, or you had taken the time to email me. I had a question and you had given me extensive information regarding what you are talking about today. I think it's fantastic. So many of the ideas that, after 35 years of teaching, you think, oh, snap, wish I'd have done that 30 years ago. But can you take some of these components without doing a leaderboard and, awarding certain points for things and, just taking certain components of this out and applying it to your courses a little bit at a time, see how they work before jumping in and doing the leaderboard and doing all of these things? Did you do this all at once, or was this more organic where it built section by section?
You know me, go big or go home. So I did it all at once. Now, does that mean that a person has to? No, I think it's okay. I think it's a matter of just your personal style. If you like to try to test things out first, I just had made the decision, boop, I'm going to do it. Now, I will say that in the beginning, I did it with one course. And then I gradually, brought all of those courses into that model. So I didn't go, because if it failed miserably, I wasn't going to keep doing it, right?
Right.
But I think that you can incorporate elements in there. I think that it really is a matter of your personal comfort level. It's just, for me, with my personality, it's like, boom, I'm gonna do it all at one time.
You would put the a link in there. Are there any other books, research articles regarding this that besides the link that you put in there at the end?
Yes, there's a lot. It's sort of all over the place too, in terms of like how people talk about gamification. Everybody has like sometimes the jargon is different. The way that they express it is different. The best thing I can say is, I think they still offer it, is if you're interested in it, I really encourage you, and they don't pay me to say this, to take the course, the little quick PD through the Online Learning Consortium, OLC, because it gives you, kind of those ideas, and you get to, do activities and play around with it. And that's really what prompted me. I've been thinking about it all along, but it's what really prompted me to like go, all right, we're doing this.
Okay. Through OLC, you say they've got?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Awesome. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Oh, wish I'd been doing that. So henceforth, I'm going to try and incorporate as much of this as possible. And if it works out great, I'll take you out to lunch. If it doesn't,
I like to eat. Awesome. Were there any other questions? I'm very thorough, right?
Yes.
Well, like I said, if you do have questions, please always feel free to reach out, because I'm happy to answer them for you. And thanks, everybody.
We're right at 11. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.